All right, it's Rich on Money today talking to you about 8 crucial rules for a 1031 exchange. But before I talk about that, let me first talk quickly about who I am. Rich Carey, richonmoney.com. I'm a website where I teach military members how to kick ass in real estate and kick ass with finances, kick ass in investing. If you like this video, and if you like what I'm doing, give me a thumbs up, subscribe. Hey guys, leave comments. Leave a comment on this video. Leave a comment down there. I'm getting a little bit sad. I need some more love with comments. So please leave one right now. Like hit pause and leave a comment and then hit play. And that'll make me very happy. All right, 8 crucial rules for a 1031 exchange. What is a 1031 exchange? Well, I did a video. Essentially, it's a way to avoid paying taxes and paying a lot of taxes on the sale of a property. There are 2 really big ways to save money when you sell a property. One of those ways is for people who have primary residences. Like if you live in that property, and the rule is if you live in it 2 of the last 5 years or 2 of the last 15 years if you're military. If those apply to you, and some other things apply as well, you can avoid paying capital gains on the property when you sell it. Well, what if that doesn't apply to you? Or what if it's purely an investment property? Well, that's what today's about. Investment use, business use. How do you get out of paying? Let's say that you buy it for $100,000, sell it for $200,000, you make $100,000 in profit. When you sell that, man, how do you get out of that huge tax bill? Well, you do a 1031 exchange, otherwise known as a like-kind exchange or a Starker exchange. I'm going to talk about that today. So capital gains. When you sell real estate, Uncle Sam wants his cut of the profits, and you're either going to have to pay it, or you're going to meet certain requirements to either go the homeowner route to get out of it, which I just talked about, or the way for investors, which is the 1031 exchange way, which I'm talking about right now. These like-kind exchanges used to apply to lots of things, like, cars and like livestock and, coins. In December of 2017, they passed new laws, and now it is only real estate. Hey, still good enough for us. They call it the Starker exchange sometimes because a guy named T.J. Starker successfully sued the government in 1979 because back then the like-kind exchange rule existed, but it had to happen simultaneously. In other words, you had to buy and sell on like the same day. And that's really hard to do with real estate. He successfully sued, and eventually they changed the rule because of that. So then it was called the Starker exchange. Now you have 180 days to buy and sell. Buy a property, sell your property, buy another property, and sort of take that extra money, roll it into the new property, and not pay taxes on it. And delay that into the future, or maybe delay it forever. How do you delay that, paying that capital gains into the future or forever? There are 8 rules that you got to do. 8 rules that you want to make sure you follow. And I'll get to the way to make sure you follow those 8 correctly. I forget which number. Probably should be the first one, but I'll get to the most crucial one. The number 1 rule on here is a like kind. Okay, number 1 is like kind. It has to be like kind, and that just means that they have to be similar in nature to each other. Really all that means, though, because the rules have changed now, is that it just has to be some type of real estate or real property, which is pretty simple. Land, commercial buildings, multifamily, single family, they all meet this definition. It's also possible to buy, let's say that you first sell one of your properties and then later buy 3. You could also first sell 3 of your properties and then later consolidate and buy 1. So you can sort of mix and match that way with numbers. All possible with a 1031 exchange. Number 2 rule out of 8, no primary residences, right? This is not the primary residence rule. This is the investment or business property rule. So as the second rule, okay, no primary residences. Number 3, you must use a qualified intermediary. This is key because there's these like 8 rules, and it's really hard to do, and you can easily screw it up. Certainly what you can never do is do the purchase and then decide later you wanted to do a 1031 exchange. That's impossible. You have to have this all planned out before you start. You get a qualified intermediary, which is kind of like getting a different escrow person or a different closing agency or almost like a different lawyer, okay? You get a qualified intermediary, which is just a totally separate person than your closing company or than your real estate agent, and they're trained and qualified to handle the 1031 exchange legally for you and make sure you don't screw anything up. Very, very, very important because they're the ones that are going to keep you on track and make sure you follow all these silly rules. Number 4 rule, you have 45 days to identify a replacement. And what we mean by that is that you decide which property you're going to sell. Property or properties you're going to sell, and then you have 45 days to pick up to 3 properties that you might buy to replace that property that you've already sold. You've got to identify that within 45 days. And you've got to like write it down, and this qualified intermediary is going to be the place where you're going to do that, and they're going to document it for you so that tax-wise and legally wise you're on the straight and narrow. Number 5, you cannot receive the funds. That's why you have a qualified intermediary. They're receiving the funds. They're holding on to them from when you sell your property. And then later on, when you buy one or more properties, they're using that money to buy it. You're not like taking it and doing it yourself. The money doesn't come through you, doesn't come into your hands, doesn't sit in your account. And that way you're allowed to not pay taxes on it. So you don't receive the funds. A qualified intermediary does it through all his hocus pocus. Number 6, you cannot receive, I want to do 6. Number 6, you cannot receive boot. They use this term boot. Basically that means you cannot receive cash, right? You cannot receive some kind of payout. It's almost the same as number 5. It means you cannot receive funds at any time. When you sell your property or when you buy the replacement property, you cannot set up the transactions so that you pull cash out of the deal. I mean, you can do that, but when you do that, that money is subject to taxation. So if you receive any boot, right, any cash out of either deal, it's subject to taxation. It's not protected under 1031. You pull cash out, it gets taxed. That's the bottom line. Also, if the deal never goes through, like if you try to do a 1031, you sell your property, you look for another property, and you don't buy it in time, or you just never buy a property, then that's it. You end up paying taxes on the entire property that you sold. All the money from the first property becomes boot, and you just pay you pay the taxes on it. The number 7 rule, it has to be the same taxpayer. Basically, when you sell the property and then when you buy the replacement property, it has to be the same taxpayer. And there's a small caveat to that. Sometimes like there's something called a single member limited liability company. Basically, if I just open up an LLC only in my name, it's almost the legal equivalent of just me. And so it's pretty much the same taxpayer. So you can either be, you yourself buying and then yourself selling and then yourself buying, But if you just happen to open up an LLC along the way and it's only in your name, that's okay as well, because they treat that as the same thing as the same taxpayer. 180 days to purchase is number 8, the last rule. You have 45 days to identify which properties you might buy. That's three properties potentially. And then you have 180 days. That's total. That's from when you sell a property and you close on that. You have 180 days to complete the purchase of the replacement property. Okay. And then there's a more complicated rule. Either that or the due date of the income tax return for the tax year in which the exchange property was sold. I know that was a mouthful. Go to my blog and read about it. Google it. There's a kind of a tricky thing with the income tax return for the year in which the exchange property was sold. But most of the time, it's 180 days from the purchase. 180 days to purchase from the time you started the whole process. You just got half a year to get this done. So get it done. Get started early. I mean, hopefully you can get this whole thing done in 3, 4, 5 months. And don't stretch it out to the last second. All right? Quick recap. Because there's 8 of these rules, right? Like-kind exchange just has to be another type of real estate. Not a primary residence, has to be business. Qualified intermediary, use that like company, right? 45 days to identify a replacement. Can't receive the funds yourself. Can't pull money out of the deal. They call that boot. Number 7, has to be the same tax paper or a single member LLC. Number 8, 180 days to complete the deal. I'll mention a couple. Hey, by the way, quick pause, richonmoney.com. Subscribe to this if you like it. Leave a comment down below. I'm feeling very lonely and unloved. I need to know that people care. Of interest. This is kind of tricky with taxes, but I'll tell you about it. When you've owned a property for like 10 years, you've been depreciating it. And so now you're selling it and you're rolling the money into this new property. Well, the depreciation schedule that you've been on continues to exist in the new property. So you don't like start over with a new schedule of 27 and a half years. With that chunk of money that you're putting into the new property, you continue on the same schedule of depreciation. And then you'll have a separate amount of depreciation for a different chunk of the new property that's being depreciated fully, 27 and a half years or whatever the schedule is. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, don't try to do this yourself. Don't do this with H&R Block. Don't do this with that free guy at the BX in the military. He's not going to know how to do it. Pay the money for a smart real estate tax guy that knows this crap to get it done right. You can 1031 exchange until you die. What do I mean by that? You can literally keep 1031 exchanging properties and never pay tax on it, ever. And then when you die, the property is left to your heirs. Or heirs? I'm not sure how to say that. The property is going to be left to your kids and other people that you leave it to. And when they get it, the cost basis is going to be stepped up to the market value, and they're not going to owe any capital gains. So essentially, it's going to be transferred to them tax-free. They won't owe anything. It's an awesome tax planning tool to just 1031 exchange until death and then give it to your kids tax-free. Kids, or maybe girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever. You can give it to anybody. Charity, I think. You may want to talk to like a CPA or a tax advisor about this, because I'm not. You can do a reverse 1031 exchange. You can do it backwards. In other words, you can buy the property that you want to go into first. Buy the property first. It needs to cost more, right? The one you're replacing has to cost more. Buy the property first, and then later sell the property. You're just doing it backwards. It's actually pretty complicated though, and you have to use the intermediary again, and he has to do a bunch of complicated stuff, and you probably need to do it in cash, and it's like super, super hard, but it can be done. Just want you guys to know that. Conclusion, one of the biggest benefits of real estate is tax breaks. You need to understand how this stuff works. Now that you understand the 1031 exchange, aka Starker exchange, aka like-kind exchange, you can defer capital gains for a long, long time, if not forever. It can be a key part of your wealth building strategy. And you can not only do this now on primary residences, which I talked about in a different video and different blog post, but you can do it on investment properties. So get out there, buy more properties. Don't be afraid of taxes and capital gains. This is what rich people do. Get in there and do it like they do it. Rich on money, out.